Can you explain the different stages of sleep and how they're important?
Okay, yeah, so there's two big categories of sleep stages. One is called non-REM sleep, one is called REM sleep. In the non-REM category, we have three stages of sleep. Stage one is essentially very light sleep. So it's kind of the first stage of sleep you go to when your body rests. Usually lasts for about 10 minutes. In this stage, your heart rate kind of slows down, your body temperature goes a little bit down, and your muscles start relaxing. So in this stage, you usually can experience some twitches, so that's very common and not abnormal. And then after about 10 minutes, you start getting into stage two, non-REM sleep, which is a little bit deeper sleep. Most people spend the majority of their sleep in this stage. And again, your heart rate slows a little more down, your body temperature goes a little more down, and your muscles relax a little more. And then you go into stage three sleep, which is deep sleep. And this is kind of our more restful and very nice sleep that we need, because then you'll feel refreshed in the morning. This is, again, a stage where your muscles kind of more totally relax, and people often in this stage are very hard to wake up, which is why it's always important to try to track your sleep, because if you're getting up at a time when you're in stage 3 sleep, you're going to not be very well refreshed if you're breaking that. So it's kind of important to track your sleep to kind of figure out when you're in stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3 non-REM sleep. And then there's the category called REM sleep. Now this is a sleep where you're actually most active during your sleep. Your eyes are sort of moving. We call it rapid eye movement sleep for that reason. Your eyes move around, your heart rate is actually a little faster, your body temperature raises again. And REM sleep is also important for many different functions, including memory. So those are the different stages of sleep.
What role do neurotransmitters and the circadian rhythm play in the sleep cycle?
Yeah, so very important for sleep is the circadian rhythm, and usually that kind of influences the neurotransmitters in our brain. So there's a couple of different structures in our brain that are involved in sleep. So one of the most important ones is called the hypothalamus, which is very deep in your brain, and that has something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus inside of it. This is directly connected to our eyes, and it's important for light perception. So the circadian rhythm is basically a biological clock that we have where your body's releasing certain hormones at times and suppressing certain hormones at times, and those hormones will either make you sleepy or more awake, and they're tied directly to the light that our body's getting through the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and that nucleus basically transmit to other parts of the brain, like the brainstem, which releases GABAergic neurons, which make our body relax and make those muscles relax, and also melatonin production, which is in the pineal gland, and that also makes us very sleepy. And when we have light hitting the suprachiasmatic nucleus, it sort of suppresses the melatonin, and adenosine is another one that gets suppressed when you have light, and that's why we're awake during those times. And when there's no light, then our body starts making more of those hormones, and we start feeling sleepy again. So that's a rhythm that our body has, usually on a 24-hour kind of basis.
Cool. What are some general tips for sleep hygiene for high schoolers?
Okay, so high schoolers. Typically, I think the number one thing that high schoolers probably don't do well is create a regular routine. So oftentimes, they're sleeping at 10, or they're sleeping at midnight, they're sleeping at 11. There's no certain set schedule, and that can be pretty detrimental because, like I said, our circadian rhythm is more on a 24-hour clock, so we want that to be pretty well set. The other thing that high schoolers probably are notorious for doing is being on their phones, right? And so when you think about it, the phone is actually a light source. So when you're on your phone at night, it's emitting light to the suprachiasmatic nucleus and suppressing those sleep hormones and disturbing your ability to sleep. So obviously you want to try to be away from the phone, especially about 1 to 2 hours before you sleep. Try to keep away any lights, any screen time at that time. The other one I would say is try to create a routine in terms of not only time, but things that you do. So, brush, shower, and then sleep, right? Or brush, read, and then sleep.
Can you explain what sleep debt is and tips to repay it?
Okay. So sleep debt is a fairly controversial topic. So there are some folks who believe that essentially, so every human requires some amount of sleep per night. So typically that's more when you're young or high schoolers. You guys should be getting about 9.5 hours of sleep. When you get older, that kind of reduces, and typically we say a fully grown adult should get about 8 hours of sleep. Now sleep debt is essentially when you're not paying that 9.5 hours a day or that 8 hours a day. So let's say for a grown adult, they're only sleeping 6 hours a day, and they go 5 days a week when they're working, and they're only sleeping 6 hours. So they're only getting 5 times 6, 30 hours of sleep a week, when they really need 5 times 8, 40 hours a week. So that sleep debt is 10 hours. Now, when do you repay that 10 hours, and how do you repay it? So a lot of people do that with naps. So during the day, they may try to take naps, but this is not a great way to do it because while it may improve your, sleep in the short term and increase your efficiency and everything after the nap, it can disrupt that circadian rhythm that we have. So another strategy that people do is, let's say, just for the same example, that working week, they'll sleep an extra maybe 2, 3, 4 hours a day on the weekend to try to repay that debt, which is a better strategy. But again, you'd rather just not create a debt, right?
Yeah. Can you explain some of the benefits of reducing sleep deprivation, specifically for high schoolers?
Okay, yeah, so reducing sleep deprivation is very beneficial for high schoolers. Number one, brain health, right? So, like I said, in REM sleep, that's when we really solidify a lot of our memory and a lot of things that you learned that day get solidified. So, obviously, very important for schoolwork and achieving academic excellence. So, that's going to be very important to try to hit that REM sleep every night, a couple cycles of that, right? Which is why they say when you're studying, you really need to sleep that 9.5 or 8 hours a day. Another benefit for high schoolers is mood. So, sometimes high school can be stressful. Having proper amount of sleep is linked to having a better mood throughout the day, and so obviously that's very beneficial. Another thing is improved athleticism. So, when you have regular sleep without deprivation, you have better reaction time, better reflexes, better strength. So, obviously for the high school athletes, this is very important. So, especially before a big game, you definitely want that full 9.5 hours of sleep.